Check, check, testing, testing. Almost ready, guys. Almost ready. Just got to update the social media and we will be ready to get going. What a crazy day I have for you. All right. Let's see. First off, I need to know, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me all right? There's a very specific reason I'm asking. It's because I completely tore down my entire setup and I put my entire studio back together. It has been crazy. Just one second. All right. How about that? All right. Okay. All right. I've got a couple seconds lag between what I say here and what shows up over here. So guys, today is going to be an interesting day. All right. So, I have chosen anatomy and physiology, and by the way, I have probably the largest collection of CBET study materials that you will find anywhere on the internet. Okay, so I have a lot of materials, and oh, hold on, let me adjust the lag. That's so annoying. So I have my laptop set up over here, because it's going to help me with answering you guys' questions and stuff live. Now, ideally, I would be using Zoom, and I would allow up to 100 people to log into Zoom at the same time. However, Zoom, in their infinite wisdom, has limited my ability to attach a Zoom to a stream. They've rolled out some updates, didn't tell anybody that it was going to happen, and I opened up Zoom. I wanted to implement what I used to be able to do, because I've done it for meetings and stuff, and now miraculously I can't get it to work, and the function is not even there. I can't even find it. So it is what it is, right, guys? So all right, guys, anatomy and physiology, it's probably the number one thing that I say differentiates a regular biomed to a very good biomed, is your interpretation, your knowledge of anatomy and physiology. Because if you don't know the body, you don't understand the medical equipment. That's all there is to it. You have to understand why it does what it does. So here is how we're going to run this. This is basically me recording my own studying. And as you guys have questions, I'm going to answer them as I can. And we are going to pull up supplementary information as we go. And I can switch my screens and everything. I have all that ability, so I'm going to switch my down view camera so you guys can see exactly what I'm reading. Now, the crazy thing about these stupid Logitech cameras is that they want to readjust the focus all the time, and it's because of the skin tone. Like, they adjust the white balance. It's like flashing dark, bright, dark. So anyway, I apologize for that until I get my Razer camera installed back here. These Logitech cameras, that's what we're using, all right? So it just is what it is, all right? So anatomy and physiology, there are 11 major organ systems, And that would be the circulatory system, the lymphatic system, the respiratory system, the I always mess this up. Integumentary system. Integumentary. I always forget that one. The gastrointestinal system, the urinary system, the musculoskeletal system, the nervous system, the reproductive system, and the immune system. This is going to be good. It's going to be good. So we're going to start right off. And let me switch this camera over here so that we can go over anatomy, physiology. Should I do it per what my book says? So this is the book. Oh, hold on. Overhead. Sorry, guys. Here we go. So this is the book, which you can see I have completely destroyed, and I have turned it into pages, not only for the ease of speaking on camera, but also so I can scan it in. Yes, I have this book scanned, and when I'm done going through all the different systems, I have the cards here, and we can go through the cards and see if the material covered what was necessary. So I have notes from all sorts of different CBETs. I have notes from the CBET study course, which is Amy sponsored. This is the CBET study guide, and these are the CBET flashcards. I mean, there's enough knowledge here. We should be able to make something happen, right? So, guys, let's start this out. Maybe if you contact me, maybe I'll help you out with some of these materials if you need to find where they're at. I'll include links down the video description so you can buy them. Go ahead. I highly encourage you to buy them. There's also an Amy sponsored study group, which is supposedly absolutely fantastic. I don't know. I haven't been through it. Now, there's one thing I'm going to apologize for right away, guys. Now, I've never taken my CBET, and that's for a pretty good reason. I have gone through, like these guys right here, before, many times before, in fact. I've studied for this test several times before in my career, and I have been pissed off every single time that happens. So if we get to like practice questions and stuff and I get irritated, I'm just letting you know that's the reason I've never taken the CBET to this day, is because in my opinion there's some baby boomer shit that is on this test that we haven't had to do in the last 20 years, but for some weird reason we still have to test on it. That's horrible. That's unexcusable. And I don't know, because I haven't taken the test, but if all the study materials includes the same garbage, then I have to assume that it's going to be on the test. All right? So let's just get that through right now. So if I see like I'm irritated, it's because I've been able to be very successful at this career for 21 years, and I haven't had to know that garbage. So why is it on the test? Anyway, let's get back to it, all right? So this video will be available after the live. Yes, all live streams are available after they go live. You can go into, well, I should just create a live stream playlist so that you guys can see it. I should just do that, right? You can go into my channel, Better Biomed, and then, you know, you could see live streams. You can go through all my live streams previously. Some of them are pretty cool. Some of them are pretty long. So just to let you know. All right, anatomy and physiology. Let's go ahead and get into it. So the 11 body organ systems, we're going to start out with the integumentary system. And it says here, God, why do I have to say this? I hate this word. Integumentary system consists of skin, which includes sebaceous glands, sweat glands, hair, nails, and serves a variety of functions associated with protection, secretion, and communication. In the functions associated with protection, the integumentary system protects the body from pathogens, including bacteria, viruses, and chemicals. In the functions associated with secretion, sebaceous glands secrete sebum, oil. Sebum. You know what I'm talking about. Oils that waterproof the skin, and sweat glands, which assist with thermal regulation. Sweat glands also serve as excretory organs and help rid the body of metabolic waste. In the functions associated with communication, sensory receptors distributed throughout the skin send information to the brain regarding pain, touch, pressure, temperature. In addition to protection, secretion, and communication, the skin manufactures vitamin D, which will help. Ultraviolet light can absorb certain chemicals, such as specific medications. Okay, this is the one system. It's interesting it starts with it because I always forget that one. I mean, the skin, I don't know why, I've always considered the skin part of the endocrine system because of the sweat glands, but no, it's integumentary system. Not much to say there, right? It's skin, sweat glands, hair, nerves, all that, right? There are different layers of the skin, and hold on, let me pull up some of those fantastical resources. So there are several layers to the skin. Obviously, you have the outside layer, the middle layer, and the inside layer. 3 layers. What are they called? Well, I've got this little display over here where I'm trying to sift through because this is in a different order than this, which is in a different order than this. Well, I'll tell you what, screw that. We are just going to pop over here and do this one. Okay. So, for skin, there's 3 different layers. The outside layer is the epidermis, which contains cells that produce pigment and protect the immune system. There's the dermis, which carries the nerve endings, the oil and the sweat glands, and the hair follicles. And then there's the subcutaneous tissue, which is made up of fat, connective tissue, and larger blood vessels. So when you cut through, you're normally cutting past the epidermis, often past the dermis. When you get down, the white, and then all of a sudden it starts bleeding, you're getting down the subcutaneous tissue, the 3rd layer. So there are 3 different layers. Tell you what, let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's do that screen share. So that you guys can see what I'm talking about. There you go. How about that? I will just flash over to this one so that you guys can see what we're talking about. How about that? And I'll pull up supplemental information over here on this screen. Let's get back to it. All right. The next one that we're going to talk about is the muscular system. There are 3 types of muscle tissue. There's skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. There's more than 600 muscles in the human body. All muscle tissues have an electric gradient that can reverse when stimulated. Excitability. Contraction. All muscles have the ability to contract or to shorten. Elongate. All muscle tissues share the same capacity to elongate or relax. All right. Types of muscular tissue. Actually, they go into some pretty good detail here. Tell you what, let's see if we can pull it up on this screen as well. So I'll read it, and we'll pull it up with supplementals. Are they going to pull up something cool? Okay, over here it says the musculoskeletal system provides a framework and the engine for our movement, posture, and physical abilities. This organ system includes the skeleton, all the muscles, tendons, and ligaments attached to the skeleton. Muscles in the body. Skeletal, which are voluntary. Smooth, it says they're visceral or involuntary, which are inside the walls of organs like intestines. And cardiac, heart muscle. Interesting. This is a pretty good refresher because I don't really remember that there's 3 different. I knew that there was voluntary and involuntary muscles. I knew nothing about the fact that there's smooth muscles, which makes sense. That's the ones we can't control, like your bowel movements and stuff. Can't control that. Cardiac, it's the heart muscle, and it functions completely differently than the other muscles. Your body's skeletal system contains 206 bones. Jesus. The 80 bones of the axial skeleton, which is your spine and the core of your body, and there's 126 bones in the appendicular skeleton, which are your arms, legs, and bones from your core. It says, in addition to providing your body structure and facilitating its mobility, the skeletal system contains bone marrow, which produce blood and lymph cells, stores fat in the body, as well as key minerals like calcium. Good to know. And let's see what it says on the actual study guide. It says smooth muscles are involuntary muscles that are found in the walls of intestinal organs such as the stomach, intestines, and blood vessels. Smooth muscle tissues, or visceral tissue, is non-striated. Smooth muscle cells are shorter and wider than skeletal muscle fibers. Smooth muscle tissue is also found in sphincters or valves that control the movement of material through openings throughout the body. Well, there's a sphincter down by your stomach. Obviously, there's one in your butt. There's sphincters all over, right? And they're also talking about the valves in the heart, I believe. Cardiac muscle tissue is involuntary muscle that is found only in the heart. Like skeletal muscle cells or cardiac muscle cells are also striated. Now, striated is layers. Interesting. Skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are voluntary muscles that work in pairs to move parts of the skeleton. Skeletal muscles are composed of muscle fibers, cells, that are bound together in parallel bundles. Skeletal muscles are also known as striated muscles due to their striped and histological appearance under a microscope. So that would be the ones that are a whole bunch of lines. Only skeletal muscle interacts with the skeleton to move the body. When they contract, the muscles transmit force to the attached bones. Working together, the muscles and bones act as a system of levers that move around the joints. Makes sense. Brand says, I'm late to this video. Is it possible to explain what you're doing? Well, what I'm doing is I am studying for the CBET. And you guys are just along for the ride. And if I can answer, if I can answer you guys, I will answer it the best I can. And I will pull up other material here live if you guys ask questions, okay? So I will do my absolute best to stay current. Let's see. All right, we're current, we're good. And here they go into the bones on the skeletal system. It says the axial skeleton consists of 80 bones that include the vertebrae column, the rib cage, the sternum, the skull, and the hyoid bone. The vertebral column consists of 33 vertebrae classified as cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, lumbar vertebrae, and sacral vertebrae. The rib cage includes 12 paired ribs, 10 pairs of true ribs, and 2 pairs of floating ribs. And the sternum, which consists of the God, I hate this. Manubrium, corpus sterni, and xiphoid process. The xiphoid process, that little guy that's floating down at the bottom. The skull includes the cranium and facial bones. The ossicles are the bones in the middle ear, and the hyoid bone provide an attachment point for the tongue muscles. Now, I didn't know that. The axial skeleton protects vital organs including the brain, heart, and lungs. Yeah. Good. The appendicular skeleton consists of 126 bones, including the pectoral girdle, the pelvic girdle, and the appendages. That's a lot of girdles. That's more than I knew. The pectoral girdle consists of the scapulae, or shoulder blades, the clavicles. The pelvic girdle attaches to the sacrum and the sacroiliac joint. The upper appendages, arms, include the humerus, the radius, the ulna, the carpals, metacarpals, and the phalanges. Phalanges are the fingers. The lower legs include the femur, patella, fibula, tibia, tarsals, metatarsals, and phalanges. Now, guys, I highly suggest that you guys write this stuff down, okay? Or there are so many YouTube videos covering these, and if it seems like I'm going really fast, it's because I am. And that is because if I go over something that you particularly do not understand or you don't remember, go back. And in fact, I have an ink pen right here so that you guys can see that I'm going to put marks on this page for stuff that I don't know so that I can go back. So if there's something I really have questions on, we'll go back into it. So let's see over here. All right, let's do screen share. You know something? I have the Amy study guide over here because it has some really good detail, but unfortunately, I think it has too much detail. Like, unless I'm going to read it like line for line, which I'm not going to do, we're going to pop over here and we're going to do it this way. So the axial skeleton is the 80 bones, vertebrae column. So that's this, this, and all this. It's your center core. And the appendicular skeleton is this, 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 and this right here. So it's your arms and your legs. Nervous system. Oh, goodness. I remember just going through the brain alone back in the Dizzy and going through the different lobes of the brain and what they do and what they're called and stuff. Jesus, I hope none of that is on this test. That would be absolutely ridiculous. The nervous system. The nervous system interprets and issues commands such as response to conditions in the body's environment. This process is made by a complex communication of cells called neurons. Messages are sent across the plasma membrane of neurons through the process called action potential. That's probably a good one to remember, action potential, all right? These messages occur when a neuron is stimulated past a necessary threshold. These stimulations occur in a sequence from the stimulation point of one neuron to its contact with another neuron. At that point of contact, called the chemical synapse, a substance is released that stimulates or inhibits the actions of the adjoining cell. So you have one neuron, another neuron, the middle is a synapse. It releases a chemical, this one receives a chemical, and miraculously you have feelings. A network of nerves composed of neurons falls out across the body and forms a framework for the nervous system. The direction of the information flows depend on specific organizations of nerve circuits and pathways. That's very general. That's extremely general, by the way. Is he going to give his material sheet? Shh. I might do that, all right? I have a fantastic little thumb drive right here that has more biomed study material than you've ever seen before. It's all in that one little drive. And someday very soon, you might find it on the internet. Just crazy. You might just find it out there someplace. We'll see. So that's the nervous system. Over here, you can see in this little share, I've got the brain, the spinal cord, which runs down in between the vertebrae, and you have your peripheral nerves. It's funny that they don't go into more detail. I guess maybe none is needed. So in the study guide, they go over the spinal cord, The central nervous system, CNS, is made of the brain and the spinal cord. The spinal cord is encased in an ebony vertebral column called vertebrae, which protects and supports it. Its nervous tissue functions with respect to both voluntary and involuntary activity. Nerve bundles ascend and descend from the brain to all tissues of the body throughout the spinal column. Which is why if you have a broken back, depending on where the break is, you will lose function, because if you pinch a nerve, it's excruciatingly painful. Trust me, I know. However, if you have herniated disc or something like that, it's entirely possible to cause permanent nerve damage, and you can lose feeling in your appendages. You can lose skeletal function, so you won't be able to move. It sucks, all right? So that's why your spinal cord is absolutely essential. Now, it's also why if you have a broken neck, it can and might kill you, is because your vertebrae up here support your lungs and your heart. All right, that nervous signal that comes from your brain that tells your heart to pump, tells your organs to breathe, well, you need that. So if it's interrupted because, let's say you break your neck, that's why you die. It's not because you run out of blood or you bleed internally or something. No, it's because your brain can no longer tell your heart to pump, and it can't tell your lungs to breathe. So you just literally become limp tissue and you die very quickly, because without circulation, your tissues remain alive for only a couple minutes at most, and then they die, you know. So pretty crazy. So that's the spinal cord. The brain, the forebrain. The brain consists of the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. The forebrain includes the cerebrum, the thalamus, the hypothalamus. The cerebral cortex is the outer layer of the cerebrum, and it's made of gray matter. That's what we typically think of when we think of the brain, is the cerebral cortex. That's what we normally think of. But that's the gray matter. The cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres, with each responsible for multiple functions. Each cerebral hemisphere is divided into 4 lobes. The frontal lobe, I can never say this one. Parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobes. All right, so you got right and left temporal lobe. Jeez. You've got the frontal lobe and you've got the occipital lobe. Jeez. It's been a long time since I've had to study that. Sorry, guys. How many days will this consist of? Well, it depends on if I get tired, and if you guys get tired, then I will do it again and again and again, because I have a stack to study from, and I'm going to get through all this material at least once. All right? At least once. And then after that, who knows? Maybe I'll revisit. Maybe I'll figure out my Zoom and I will have some other industry experts also chime in. That would be super cool. All right. Here we go. Next page. The brain is responsible for short-term and working memory and information processing, as well as decision-making, planning, and judgment. The parietal lobe is located slightly toward the back of the brain and top of the head. It's responsible for sensory input, as well as spatial positioning of the body. The occipital lobe is located on the back of the head, just above the brainstem. That's why when you get punched on the back of the head, your lights go out. Like, when I say the lights go out, it literally, like, your vision goes blank for, trust me, I know, I know. The occipital lobe is located on the back of the head just above the brainstem. This lobe is responsible for visual input, processing, and output. Specifically, nerves from the eyes enter directly into this lobe. Finally, the temporal lobes are located at the left and right sides of the brain. These lobes are responsible for all auditory input, processing, and output. I'm just kind of curious. Which one is responsible for men not listening to their wives? Who knows? That's the most developed one. The thalamus relays sensory signals and regulates sleep and consciousness. The hypothalamus is part of the thalamus that receives information from the autonomic nervous system and instructs the pituitary gland to regulate hormones. So your brain regulates hormones. It tells the rest of your body to grow. It controls your body temperature. It controls your balance. It controls a lot of things. So, interesting. And also, it's the indirect section of the brain that causes involuntary actions like heart beating and breathing. So, which we're actually going to talk about right next, I think. Okay. Brain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The midbrain integrates sensory signals and orchestrates responses to these signals. It lies above the pons and medulla oblongata. The parts of the midbrain include the tectum. Honestly, I can't honestly tell you why we need to know this. I know you guys are probably already checking out. You're like, Jesus Christ, we gotta learn like every single section of the brain. I don't know, guys. I told you I might get upset. Like, you're starting to look at the details of this. Not completely necessary. All right, let's continue. It lies above the pons and medulla oblongata. Parts of the midbrain include the tectum, the tegmentum, and the ventral tegmentum. Jeez. The midbrain is an important part of vision and hearing. The hindbrain includes the medulla oblongata, cerebellum, and the pons. Key functions of the cerebellum, found beneath the occipital lobe at the back of the brain, and considered part of the hindbrain, includes coordinating and smoothing motion and maintaining balance and posture. It allows for rapid and repetitive movements such as playing a musical instrument and riding a bicycle. So when they talk about memory or muscle memory, that's the part that you are actually programming. Interesting. I didn't know that. Cerebellar dysfunction will result in poor control of muscles, awkward, uncoordinated movement, speech problems, and intention tremors. Not intentional, intention tremors. The pons is between the midbrain and the medulla oblongata. It has many autonomic and sensory functions. Medulla oblongata, or medulla, is beneath the midbrain and pons. The medulla oblongata plays a vital role in autonomic nervous system as regulator of the circulatory and respiratory systems. That's what I was just talking about. It controls your breathing and whatnot. Interesting that these guys, let's see. So let's go ahead and let's go into that. Let's do it. So you can see we were just talking about the medulla, the pons, the temporal lobe. There we go. Better. Cerebral cortex, the frontal lobe, the lateral ventricles, hypothalamus, which is this little guy right here in the middle, the thalamus, which is this guy right here, parietal lobe, which is back here, occipital lobe is the bottom section right here over the back of the brain, cerebellar cortex is the spongy looking guy right here, and cerebellum is the bottom section of the brain. And the temporal lobe is down here. Interesting. So even here, they discuss, they don't. So they talk about hindbrain, the midbrain, but over here they don't. That's interesting. I guess all these words are in bold, so it's something that you should remember. Key point. Okay. Tell you what. I'm going, as I pull these up, I'm going to pull them up over here so that you guys can see it and we can point it out as we go. So let's go to peripheral nervous system. because this is how I like to study. Holy cow. Okay. Obviously, we're not going to learn all these things, right? The peripheral nervous system consists of nerves and the ganglia throughout the body that control both voluntary and involuntary functions. Involuntary functions are managed by sympathetic nerves, which trigger fight or flight response, and parasympathetic nerves, which control the basic rest and digest body functions. Well, that looks incredibly. I remember a long time ago when I had to study this stuff. That was the kind of stuff that we had to know, like all the different nerves. Okay, so here, peripheral nervous system. So that's the ganglia that they're talking about. That's the I believe the ganglion is the breakout from the spinal column. Let's see. This is definitely a better explanation. Okay, we have the sympathetic nerves, which it says dilate pupils, inhibits saliva flow, accelerates heart rate, dilates the bronchi, stimulates stomach, converts glycogen to glucose, secretes adrenaline, and inhibits bladder contraction. And then on the other side, we have the parasympathetic nerves, which constrict the pupils, stimulate saliva flow, that slows the heart rate, constricts the bronchi, stimulates stomach, pancreas. It's basically the exact opposite. Stimulates bile and contracts the bladder. Interesting. And when we're talking about the peripheral nervous system, obviously this is what we're talking about, how they're distributed from the spinal column to all the appendages. Jesus, that is a lot of nerves. Please archive the video. So yes, I will absolutely do that for you. No problem. Okay. Respiratory system. Now here is where we start getting in, the brain and whatnot. Believe it or not, in all my career, I have not had to do too much with the brain. Not unless you're doing maybe some EEG or something, but usually neuro, you know that you have a brain, you have a spine, and that's essentially where it goes. I mean, damaged nerves, yeah. Knowing the nerves in the neck and whatnot definitely help, especially when you're talking about like, nerve stimulators and stuff. But I don't know. Some of this is a little bit too much. I would rather everybody studies up on the respiratory system and the cardiac system. So if some of these I feel like I'm going through really fast, that's why. Because while even it might be on the test, it's not something that you should know. Well, maybe you should know it, but I don't feel like it. If I haven't had to use that in so many years. Cardiac, you are going to use the cardiac like pretty heavily. Yes. Now I do believe, it's been a while, man. I do believe I did videos on almost every one of these organ systems. I'll have to go back in and find it. But if you can imagine watching like a video that goes over 5 minutes and it has, explanations of all this, it's probably a little bit easier than me reading. But, I'm actually doing this for my own studying because May 1st at 1 p.m. CST, I am taking my CBET exam. Yes, sir. It's going to happen. Okay. I believe that this is probably a pretty good breakdown. All right. Respiratory system. The main function of the respiratory system is to supply the body with oxygen and rid the body of carbon dioxide. Pretty simple, right? Okay. This exchange of gases occurs in millions of tiny alveoli, which are surrounded by blood capillaries. The respiratory system also filters air. Air is warmed moistened and filtered as it passes through the nasal passages before it reaches the lungs. The respiratory system also allows for speech. Go figure. As air passes through the throat, it moves through the larynx, which vibrates and produces sound before it enters the trachea, which is your windpipe. Cough production allows foreign particles which have entered the nasal passages or airways to be expelled from the respiratory system. The respiratory system functions in the sense of smell using chemoreceptors, very similar to the same type of chemoreceptors that activate taste. Chemoreceptors that are located in the nasal cavity and respond to airborne chemicals. The respiratory system also helps the body maintain acid-base homeostasis. Hyperventilation can increase blood pH during acidosis, low pH. Slow breathing during alkalosis, high pH, helps lower blood pH. All right, hold on. So this is something that I've never heard before in my entire career. So let's go back over that one more time. The respiratory system also helps maintain acid-base homeostasis inside the body. Hyperventilation, so breathing faster, can increase blood pH during acidosis. So when your body is very acidic, you breathe faster and it lowers the pH. So when you're exercising, you're increasing the acidity of the body. So your body breathes faster and faster and faster. You know, that's very interesting. It makes a lot of sense because I'm not necessarily out of air, you know, but then again, sometimes your body just wants to keep breathing faster and faster. And that's because it knows that the chemical imbalance inside your body that you're not recognizing. So interesting. So breathing faster will change, it lowers your pH. Slow breathing during alkalosis, high pH, helps lower blood pH. So breathing faster and slower. Didn't know that, guys. Didn't know that. Upper and lower respiratory system. So here is where we are going to fly over to the chart and we're going to be able to see some of this stuff. The respiratory system can be divided into upper and lower respiratory systems. The upper respiratory system includes the nasal cavity, the mouth, the pharynx, the larynx. The lower respiratory system includes the trachea, the lungs, the bronchial tree. Alternatively, the components of the respiratory system can be categorized as part of the airway, the lungs, or the respiratory muscles. The airway includes the nose, nasal cavity, mouth, pharynx, larynx. So the pharynx is your throat, your larynx is your voice box, your trachea is your windpipe, your bronchi, which are the large tubes, and the bronchial network, which are the tubes that sprawl off from that. So if you can imagine, your lungs are a lot like a piece of broccoli. And I wish I had broccoli because I could show you exactly what it looked like. So your bronchi are your main trunks, and then they branch off until you get to your alveoli, which are the tiny little flecks on the outside of your broccoli, right? Okay. Let's see. Let's go back. The lungs are structures that house... Wait. Hold on. The airway includes the nose, nasal cavity, mouth, pharynx, larynx, trachea, the windpipe, the bronchi, and the bronchial network. The airway is lined with cilia, which are little like hairs, that trap microbes and debris and sweep them back towards the mouth. The lungs are structures that house the bronchi and the bronchial network. So over here, you can see the trachea, the windpipe. It's funny enough, it actually does look like that. And then you have your bronchi and your bronchial network, which are all these guys right in here. So yeah, it says right here, your main bronchi, these two large, big boys right here. And then it breaks into smaller and smaller ones. The lungs are structures that house the bronchi and bronchial network, which extend into the lungs and terminate in millions of alveoli, air sacs, tiny little sacs. The walls of the alveoli only 1 cell thick, allowing for exchange of gases with the blood capillaries that surround them. So that's something else I didn't know. So your alveoli are the little sacs at the end of the bronchial network. And the interesting thing is they're really thin. That way there, when air comes in, it passes through the membrane and exchanges with the capillaries, and then the carbon dioxide comes back through the membrane and it's carried out through the lungs. Interesting. I have a story that goes along with this, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. The walls of the alveoli are only 1 cell thick, allowing for exchange of gases with blood capillaries that surround them. The right lung has 3 lobes. The left lung only has 2 lobes. Well, that's interesting. The right lung has 3 lobes, 1, 2, and 3. The left lung has 2 lobes, so 1 right here, and then the bottom one right here. I have a feeling that's something that you might want to remember. So the right side has more. Interesting. I wonder if they know why. The left lung only has 2 lobes, leaving room for the heart on the left side of the body. The lungs are surrounded by a pleural membrane, which reduces friction between the lungs and the walls of the thoracic cavity while breathing. The respiratory muscles include the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles, which are the muscles right here in between your ribs. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that separates the thoracic and abdominal cavities. So your diaphragm is going to be right up here. It's going to be right underneath your lung sacs. And to breathe in, it goes down and your lungs get bigger. That's your diaphragm actually coming down. And then when you release, it comes all the way up. And that's how you squeeze out the air. The intercostal muscles are located between the ribs. Yes. So, here is the interesting thing. So, a lot of you guys know that I used to be in the military. And I am no longer in the military because my lung collapsed twice. So, it collapsed twice. And I had to learn a lot about this particular system because I was in an extreme amount of pain and it sucked a lot, and everything moved around. So here's the interesting thing. Your lungs are inside their sacs, the pleural, right? The pleural membrane, it said. The interesting thing is there is like 2 pleural membranes. So it separates your body. So if you get a hole in one of your lungs, it will collapse down to nothing, about this big. So about the size of my fist is how big my lungs were. Your lungs are normally this big, like all the way up here by your clavicle, all the way down here. That's how big your lungs are. They're huge. But mine collapsed all the way down to about the size of an orange. And when that happens, you have this large cavity. So it would be this side of my body. It collapsed down to about this big, right? And now I have air inside my chest cavity, which is extremely painful. So normally, there's many processes for why that shouldn't happen. But when that happens, your trachea will move. It moves. So your heart moves, everything moves, because now there's this open space inside your cavity. So all this will migrate over. And if you can imagine what that feels like to have your heart move and have your lungs move and your trachea gets pulled off to the side because now there's this open space. And every time you breathe, here, let me do a screen share. So imagine, for me, it was this side of the lung over here, the side that's got the 3 lobes. And when you pop a hole in your lung, every time you breathe, a little bit of air goes from inside your lung to your chest cavity. And that is called, well, for me, it's called the spontaneous pneumothorax. A pneumothorax is not necessarily spontaneous. You can get a pneumothorax from a projectile or a stab wound or something. That's not spontaneous pneumothorax. Spontaneous is when something happens on accident. like for me, I can yell extremely loud. And because I yelled extremely loud and it was during a sporting event and I got smashed against the wall, I'm very competitive. So, and I used to be an athlete. So I got smashed against a wall and I was yelling and it put extra stress and it popped a hole in my lung. And that was spontaneous because, nothing really caused it technically. So your lung collapses, and the only way for you to expand your chest cavity and allow your lung to expand is you have to technically pop a hole in your intercostals, like what they said. They said that your intercostal muscles, which right here, you can feel them in between your ribs, and I actually have cut marks underneath my arm right here where I had several chest tubes, multiple chest tubes, all right? And I still have the cuts right here under my ribs, so I have damaged nerves down here. However, I could probably put a chest tube in myself. I've had it done to me like 4 times now. And so what they do is they cut right here, and just the natural poking a hole into your chest cavity will allow, like, if you can imagine a little explosion of air, because it's like your chest becomes a balloon, right? Because the air keeps coming in and coming in and coming in. It has nowhere to go, so it kind of compresses. So when they poke a hole, not to gross you guys out, hopefully you guys can handle it, blood and stuff goes, shoots all over the place, right? Because it's under pressure. And now, since now the air in your chest cavity has someplace to go, now your lung, which if you can imagine like a balloon inside a balloon, if you take the air out of this one, now this one here can expand. So they pop a hole, now all of a sudden they put like a needle in here, and now my lung fills up. So basically, you feel like you're drowning in a room full of air, because technically you are, because you're not getting any air, so with every breath you feel like you're dying. So it's a crazy feeling. I don't recommend it. However, I could probably, and I would, if I had to, I could decompress my chest with something as simple as like an ink pen. And that's because it's such an emergent feeling when you're drowning, like in a room full of air, that there are many ways that you can poke a hole so that now the air can come out and now you can breathe again. But anyway, we were talking about that. So the reason I know so much about this is A, I experienced it, and B, what they had to do to me finally is, well, they take a chest tube and they stick a chest tube way up to here. So imagine they cut a hole right here, they stick a tube all the way up inside your chest cavity, and it kind of sits like right up here, right at the very top of your cavity. And your lung fills up, and that chest tube vents material, blood, whatever, for days, like several days, until your lung heals itself, hopefully, because all body tissues just want to heal themselves. So you have this chest tube up there, and you see people in hospitals, they're running low suction units, which is it's like a bubbler, and it sits down there and it constantly bubbles, and it's really, really low pull vacuum. And what it's doing is it's pulling a vacuum in the chest cavity to suck out that blood, suck out any liquids and any air that still squirts through the lungs. So hopefully the lung will fix itself. And if it can't, they do what they did to me. Like I said, I had it happen to me twice, and the second time was the end of my military career. And yeah, this is still kind of a sad thing, but anyway, the second time it happened, I underwent surgery, and that's when they went in with scopes, and they take a brush. And if you can imagine, well, there's a brush over here someplace. They take a brush on the end of a flexible scope, and it goes all the way up inside there. It's a laparoscopic procedure, and they scrub the inner wall with basically like a Brillo pad, and they make the inside of the chest wall bleed, and then they stick that low pressure vacuum back up, the chest tube back up inside you, and then as your lung expands, that blood and the lung tissue make it stick like glue. Okay, so my lung on this side is actually attached to the inside of my rib cage, and that's called pleurodesis. Okay, so the pleura is that sac that they're talking about that surrounds the lung. They scratch it until it bleeds, or they sometimes use like a chemical like a baking soda or something like that. And what it does is it creates a surface for the lung, the pleura, to attach to the inside of the rib cage, right? So they scrub the inside of the rib cage, the pleura expands, and it kind of sticks, and now it won't collapse, all right? Because remember, it's a hole through the pleura that actually creates a pneumothorax. So if the pleura is attached to the outside of the rib cage, even if it pokes a hole, your lung can still do its thing, right? Ideally. But I know that's a little long drawn out, but at least now you guys kind of understand what's going on. Now it's interesting only because it happened to me. I don't know if you guys find that interesting, but that's real world where a little bit of anatomy, physiology can help you out, because I understood what the doctor was telling me as it was going on. You know, I knew exactly what the procedure was going to be and stuff when it happened, and it took a lot of stress off of me understanding what was going on, because otherwise I can imagine it'd be pretty scary for some people. Anyway, let's see if we can go into the next section, which is the circulatory system. Okay, this is a big one. All right. So the circulatory system, God, geez. Let's just go into it. And I'm gonna have to pull up multiple tabs, guys, so please excuse me. Oh, shoot. There we go, heart diagram. So the circulatory system is possibly one of the most important things for you to understand, all right? Because there's so many aspects of medical equipment that interface with the heart and the circulatory system, and everything from surgery to ER, patient monitoring. There's so much stuff that has to do with circulatory and respiratory. So between those two, you're looking at it, man. Okay, let's go into the circulatory system. All right, well, let's see what the official study guide says, all right? So circulatory system, the circulatory system is responsible for internal transport of substances to and from the cells. The circulatory system consists of the following parts: blood, blood vessels, and the heart. Kind of simple, right? Blood is composed of water, solutes, and other elements in a fluid connective tissue. That's an interesting way to describe blood. Blood vessels. Vessels are tubules of different sizes that transport blood in a closed system to tissues throughout the body. Heart. The heart is a muscular pump that provides the pressure necessary to keep blood flowing throughout the circulatory system. Now, I believe they call that systemic flow. You know, it creates the flow for the entire system. As blood moves through the system from larger tubules through smaller ones, the rate slows. The flow of blood in capillary beds, the smallest tubules, is actually quite slow. What's really funny is you can pull up video of blood going through capillaries, and you can actually see like red blood cells and stuff kind of squeezing through, and it is actually quite slow. It's pretty impressive. The supplementary system, the lymph-vascular system, cleans excess fluids and proteins and returns them to the circulatory system. Now, this is all stuff that I had to study when I was learning about perfusion. That's a whole nother thing. I don't know if we're going to talk about perfusion here. I guess we'll get to it. Holy cow. Talk about a machine that does everything that the body does. It's so crazy. The human heart. So let's see. Over here, it says circulatory system transports nutrients, respiratory gases, and metabolic products throughout a living organism, permitting integration among various tissues. The process of circulation includes the intake of metabolic materials, conveyance of those materials throughout the organism, and the return of harmful byproducts to the environment. So your blood takes things like to your endocrine system so that they can get rid of them. It's the transport system, and it's also the food system for the entire body. Interesting. The circulatory system is absolutely insane. That's all I can say. It's absolutely insane. It says invertebrate animals have a great variety of liquid cells and modes of circulation through many invertebrates, though many invertebrates have what's called an open system, which allow fluid to pass more and less freely throughout the tissues. Well, yeah, we have a very constricted and regulated system. Oh, so cool. We have a live fly-through. Will it let me? Man. Okay. Oh God, we could spend all day on circulatory system. Image in a new tab. There we go. Okay. I believe we're missing something from this photo right here, so I will fill it in as we go. Okay. Cool, cool. All right, hold on. Let me come over here. Pull up supplemental material. Okay, so guys, I'm telling you right now, we're going to spend some time on cardiac, all right? So, the human heart. Let's read it off first. A heart is a muscular pump made of cardiac muscle tissue. Heart chamber contraction and relaxation is coordinated by electrical signals from the self-exciting sinoatrial node and atrioventricular node. Atrial contraction fills the ventricles, and ventricular contraction forces blood in arteries leaving the heart. This sequence is called the cardiac cycle. Valves keep blood moving through the heart in a single direction to prevent any backwash as it flows through its four chambers. Okay, so we already started talking about some of the chambers of the heart, so let's get right into it. Four chambers, there's two atriums, which are filling, and there's two ventricles, which are your pumps. So your atriums are the ones that fill the heart, and then the ventricles pump it out. So there's two septums. There's an atrial and ventricular septum right here. You can see the septum is a wall. So you see the septum right here. It's interesting in this photo that they're missing the tricuspid valve. It's one of the most important valves, and it's not there. Okay, so there's four one-way valves. There's the tricuspid, there's the mitral, there's the pulmonary, and there's the aortic. So right here you can see the aortic valve. This is the left side. This is the right side of the heart. So the right side of the heart, the blood comes in, it goes to the right ventricle, and it goes out to the lungs, right? And then the pulmonary vein, the blood comes in from the lungs, it's oxygenated, and then it comes into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, and then it goes out through the aorta to the body. Okay, so imagine the blood comes in on the right side, squeezes out to the lungs, and then it comes in from the lungs on the pulmonary vein, and it goes into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, and then out through the aorta. I'm really interested in why they left out the tricuspid valve. It's this little guy right here. Interesting. I did a whole video on this guy, and I will, in this video description, I will leave those video links down there so that you guys can check them out. And I think we'll go into some detail on those. I'm going to go through this material kind of fast, but I'm going to leave those videos down below as supplemental. So maybe tonight or tomorrow I will fill those in so that anybody that views this video, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, What I can tell you is that they definitely forgot one of the most important parts of the heart, which is the tricuspid. There's many surgical procedures to help repair the tricuspid or replace it because it's one of the most common parts of the heart that go bad, all right? So, what you should know is that there is a pulmonary artery, and that would be this guy right here. Oh, yep, it's labeled. So pulmonary artery. So it goes out to lungs. Pulmonary vein, they come in from the lungs, and then the aorta, they split off. So you have the oxygenated blood goes from the lungs to the left atrium through the pulmonary artery. I don't like the way that's worded, guys. I don't like the way that's worded. I think I explained it better. Blood comes down the right side, it goes out to the lungs, comes back, goes into the left side, and the left ventricle squeezes it through the aorta and out to the different sections. So there are the valves that you should remember. There's the pulmonary valve, which is on the pulmonary artery. There's the tricuspid, which is right here. There is the aortic valve, which is right here on the aorta. And there is the mitral valve right here between the atrium and the ventricle. All right. So the mitral valve is also one that I've seen them replace. All right, let's see. I think that kind of covers it. I'm like I said, I'm going to leave a video that describes this way better, guys, because I can only do so much. Just giving you guys the flow so that you know what it does and how it does what it does. Okay? Simple enough. So if I take these pauses, it's because I have 3 screens, all right, full of information, and I'm picking and choosing what is probably more important to you guys to move forward, okay? So that is the human heart. So let's go through, according to the study guide, exactly what happens, okay? Deoxygenated blood from the body flows into the heart in this order. The superior vena cava, which is up here, it brings blood from the upper body. The inferior vena cava brings blood from the lower body, which they don't have them labeled. Interesting. Anyway, they would be labeled. So there is a superior, which is for the upper body. Inferior is for the lower body. Okay, and it brings the blood into the right atrium. So it goes through the atrium, through the tricuspid, into, well, I don't like how that says it. It goes into the right ventricle. Yeah, through the tricuspid, into the right ventricle, into the pulmonary valve, through the pulmonary valve, and then it goes here through the pulmonary artery, out to the lungs, comes back in the pulmonary vein, into the left atrium, through the mitral valve, into the left ventricle, then out through the aortic valve into the aorta. All right. So the important thing that you should know is the left side is oxygenated blood, the right side is deoxygenated blood. It says the left and right sides of the heart are separated by the septum. The heart has its own circulatory system with its own coronary arteries. So that's interesting. We hear about heart attacks and whatnot, and that is usually when there's some sort of blockage in one of the coronary arteries, the arteries that surround the heart. If there's some sort of blockage, then I told you earlier, without blood flow, you only have a couple minutes before tissue starts to die. And if you can imagine, when parts of your heart starts to die, so does the rest of your body. Blood. Let's talk about some blood. Now, mind you guys, I already said I'm going to leave some videos for you to watch in the description. Probably tomorrow I'll post those videos there. There's some really good content online that support this. All right, let's see. That's a pretty good description right there. Okay. All right, we're going to talk about some blood, because this is something that many medical devices have something to do with, all right? Not just laboratory. If you don't understand blood, then you don't even understand something as simple as SpO2. So blood. Blood helps maintain a healthy internal environment in animals by carrying raw materials into cells and removing waste products. It helps stabilize internal pH and host cells of the immune system. An adult has about 5 quarts of blood. That's probably something that you want to remember. Blood is composed of red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. Now, I guarantee that's something that you're going to have to remember. The 4 components of blood. Matter of fact, I'm certain that you're going to have to remember that. So, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, plasma. Plasma constitutes more than half of all blood volume. It's mostly water and serves as a solvent. Plasma contains plasma proteins, ions, glucose, amino acids, hormones, and dissolved gases. We just went through the respiratory system. Well, that's where the CO2 and the O2 are transported. They're dissolved inside the blood. Platelets are fragments of stem cells and serve an important function in blood clotting. I'll tell you what, just talking about blood clotting alone and what causes it and the stages of it, I don't know if we're going to cover that. What amazing stuff, man. So if you ever see in a laboratory they have to keep rocking blood in the blood rockers, that's because as soon as blood stops moving, it coagulates. It's crazy, right? So you keep the blood moving and it doesn't coagulate, and you can test it. It's interesting stuff, man. Platelets are the little pieces that I don't know if it's a biochemical response, but when it detects a bleed or a deficiency inside one of the blood vessels, the platelets move to attack the cut. And I should pull it up. There's definitely some good images of this. There we go. Now there's different stages of it, and we're just going to show one. Well, that's kind of cool. They show the composition of blood there. Most of that you'll definitely not need to know. However, this is an important piece. When, I don't want to say senses, when blood senses a leak, there are various stages of what happened to form a clot and how it seals the skin back up. It's amazing. So as it dries out, it pulls it back together kind of elastically, and that's how it seals the body back up from a cut. It's amazing stuff. So you can see right here, red blood cells, they sense an opening. Platelets, I don't know why it didn't show the platelets. Why didn't it show the platelets? There we go. That's a much better description. Hell yeah. Plug formation. Okay, here we go. So there's the collagen, and you can see right here, the platelets will start to gather, And it says that there's PGI2 and NO. So is it a chemical? Is it a chemical stimulant that causes it to happen? I don't know. But it does, it forms thrombin. And so the platelets will eventually start building on each other into thrombin, and it causes like an internal and external scabs. So it says prior to vascular injury, platelets are maintained in the resting state by a combination of inhibitory factors that place a threshold that must be surmounted in order for platelets to be activated. Okay, so platelets are activated. And it says those factors include prostaglandin and nitric acid are released from the endothelial cells, and ADP base, or ADPase, on the surface of the endothelial cells that whatever, man. I don't think we're going to read through all that. It says the development of platelet plug is initiated by the exposure of collagen and the local generation of thrombin. This causes platelets to adhere via collagen and something called the Willebrand factor. That sounds interesting. And they spread on the connected matrix, forming a layer. Afterwards, the platelet plug is extended as additional platelets are activated via the release of secretion of thromboxane. Interesting. So it is like a chemical stimulant. So everything is in a perfect matrix, and when the matrix is upset, that is when thrombin are formed, and then they just kind of glue to each other, and that's how you get the plug. And what's even more amazing is when they talk about how that plug like seals it back up later, and you know, it becomes a scab, and as it dries out, it pulls the original material, the tissue, back together until the scab falls off. It's completely designed that way. It's amazing. So if you guys think I'm a nerd about electronics, I'm a nerd about the body too, man. All right, so platelets. It says here, blood helps maintain a healthy internal environment in animals by carrying raw materials to cells and removing waste products that help stabilize internal pH of host cells of the immune system. Red blood cells transport oxygen to cells. Red blood cells form in the blood marrow, in the bone marrow, and can live for about 4 months. Interesting. So red blood cells live for about 4 months. These cells are constantly being replaced by fresh ones, keeping the total number relatively stable. They lack nucleus. Part of the immune system, white blood cells defend part of the body against infection, and they remove waste. The types of white blood cells include lymphocytes, neutrophils, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. Never had to know that throughout my career. So the white blood cells, they will attack any substances in the body that they do not like. They encompass it, and then they transport it to the lymphatic system, or the endocrine system, I believe. It's the lymphatic system. Yeah, so they take it to the lymph node system, and then the body will expel those things. That's why when you have a cold or a virus, you know these nodes up here, they get really swollen. That's because your white blood cells are grabbing all these things, encapsulating them, and transporting them up here so that your body can get rid of them. It takes it to your lymphatic system. All right, it says here about 7% of the body weight is blood. In general, the average human consists of about 5.5 liters of blood. Blood volume per weight is higher in children and comparatively lower in adults. That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that'd be true. So children have a higher percentage of blood in their body than adults do. The blood is slightly basic, having a pH of 7.35 to 7.45. Human blood temperature is slightly higher than the normal body temperature of 37 degrees centigrade, but rarely exceeds 38 degrees in normal conditions. And then they go into some detail. So red blood cells, they transport, I believe they transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. That's their number one, yep, it says right down here. That's their number one function. White blood cells are responsible for your immune system, right? So that's why they do the RBC count and the WBC count, the white blood cell count and the red blood cell count, is so they can kind of figure out what's going on in your body. If your white blood cell count is high, then it's a sign of some sort of infection or your body fighting itself. If your red blood cell count is low, that means you're anemic. And there's many other things that you can do to help fix that. All right. And down here they talk about composition of blood, plasma, platelets, plus peripheral blood mononuclear cells. Interesting. Red blood cells and polymorph nuclear cells. Okay. So 45% of your blood is RBCs, 55% is plasma, and interesting. Is it just me or is this off? So we got 55% plasma, we have 1% platelets, I get that. So when they spin blood up to pull out platelets and stuff, or they can inject platelets into you if you're bleeding out, that is stuff that they can do. But down here, they're 45%. Are they the polymorph nuclear cells? Is that your WBCs, your white blood cells? I know their white blood cells are way larger than your red blood cells. And it's just, I would think that they would also have a line drawn up here to the white, because as they spin up, you can see that this is like a test tube that would be in a centrifuge. The very heaviest cells are going to be your red blood cells and white blood cells. Then you can see the thin layer of your platelets, and then the plasma is going to be the top. So what they can often do, if you donate plasma, is they can spin up the blood, they can strip off a section of the plasma, and then they can inject the blood back into the body, and that way there they can harvest the plasma. Interesting. Okay, well, let's get into the lymphatic system. I don't know if I spelled that correctly. Okay, the lymphatic system. I'm trying to find these photos as I go because some of them are amazing, some of them are not so much. The lymph nodes, the lymphatic system. Okay. It says here, the lymphatic system serves as a filter for the body's interstitial fluid. The interstitial fluid, white blood cells, and foreign microbes and particles within the fluid are absorbed into the lymphatic system network of lymphatic vessels, at which point it's called lymphatic fluid, or lymph. Okay. From there, it circulates into the lymph nodes, which contain macrophages and other immune cells to eliminate foreign matter from the lymph. The lymph vessels contain valves and circulate lymph by means of smooth muscle contractions and by an influx of more fluid into the lymph vessels. Lymph is then returned to the blood through the lymphatic ducts. Okay. Well, that's interesting. So when you're sick, your lymph system often gets pretty damn sore. Now, I already talked about your lymph nodes up here in your neck. Those get very sore. But interesting that you can see how it is a network throughout the body. Interesting. And it goes throughout the body rather quickly. Let's see, we have the spleen. Part of it is the red bone marrow. I didn't know that. That's interesting, okay. The cervical lymph nodes, which is what I've been talking about. The thymus gland, auxiliary lymph nodes, which are down here. Now, I get that as well, like when you're pretty sick, like down here, you get sore, like down here under your arms, right down here. And that's why. Look at all the nodes that you have right under your arms. So they get filled up when when you get sore. Interesting. And your appendix. Interesting. Appendix is part of the system. I don't think there's too much on the lymphatic system, because we're going to go right into the immune system. This is one that is like hype word. Everybody talks about it. Let's see, is this a good image? Man, I gotta love the internet. The fact that we have access to this much information at any moment, pretty cool stuff, all right? The immune system. The immune system protects the body against invading pathogens, including bacteria, viruses, fungi, protists. The immune system includes the lymphatic system, which we just talked about, lymph capillaries, lymph vessel, and lymph nodes, as well as red bone marrow and numerous leukocytes, or white blood cells. Tissue fluid enters the lymphatic capillaries, which combine to form lymph vessels. Skeletal muscle contractions move the lymph one way through the lymphatic system to lymphatic ducts, which dump back into venous blood supply and the lymph nodes, which are situated along the lymph vessels. And they filter the lymph of pathogens and other matter. So I talked about how the white blood cells will encapsulate, well, you can call it a pathogen, and it moves it into the lymph, which is the liquid that is filtered in your lymphatic system, and then it goes out through the lymphatic ducts back into your blood, cleaned and fresh and ready for the next challenge. All right. Let's see. Outside the lymphatic vessel system lies the lymphatic tissue, including the tonsils, adenoids, thymus, the spleen, Peyer's patches. Peyer's patches. What are Peyer's patches? Do we see them over here? Oh, down here. I didn't know that. Okay. You can see it right here. Peyer's patches is right down here, down by your intestines. So there it is. So here's your spleen right up here by your stomach. Okay. Here's your cute little appendix down there. Those of us that still have it. All right. The thymus serves as a maturation chamber for immature T cells that are formed in the bone marrow. The thymus serves as a maturation chamber for immature T cells that are formed in the bone marrow. The spleen cleans the blood of dead cells and pathogens. Peyer's patches, which are located on the small intestine, protect the digestive system from pathogens. So the Peyer's patches, if you have like botulism or something, that means the Peyer's patches are working extra hard to help clean the digestive tract of any pathogens that are in your digestive tract. Man, those little guys are pretty important. Interesting, they talk about the spleen. It cleans the blood of dead cells. Well, the interesting part is some people have their spleen removed. So if you have some sort of injury and you have to have your spleen removed, that means that there's going to have to be some sort of procedure to help clean the blood after that. We might talk about that later. All right, so that is the immune system. Again, guys, I'm going to leave videos on all these different topics, so don't get excitable if I don't go into too much detail. Next, I know I didn't spell it correct. There we go. Here we go. The digestive system. Go on. It's a favorite to all of us. There's a new tab. It's funny all the things I have to do to make stuff happen for you guys. Okay, so here we are, the digestive system. It says here, the digestive system uses the following processes to convert protein, fats, and carbohydrates into usable energy for the body. Movement. Movement mixes and passes nutrients through the system and eliminates waste. Secretion. Enzymes, hormones, and other substances necessary for digestion are secreted into the digestive tract. Digestion. Digestion includes the chemical breakdown of nutrients into smaller units that enter the internal environment. Absorption. Nutrients pass through the plasma membranes into the blood or lymph and then into the body. Sounds interesting. So, they do include the mouth as part of God, I can't talk tonight, guys. The digestive system. Why? Because it's the first section. So, we're talking about secretion. You have salivary glands and stuff that help to excrete saliva, which helps to break down your food. You masticate the food, which means you chew it. So that's your first step in breaking it down. It goes into the salivary area where the liquid helps break it down a little bit more, as water is one of the best solvents known to man. Esophagus is the tube that goes all the way down here to your stomach. It says then we also have the pancreas, the gallbladder, the liver, the appendix, the rectum, the anus, small intestine, and the large intestine. So that is all parts of the digestive system. I hope they go into a lot of detail because there's some crazy stuff. And again, I'll leave videos, okay, guys? Pregastric. The mouth is the beginning of the digestive system. Mastication, the process of chewing, increases the surface area of food in the process of physical digestion to expedite chemical digestion. So it's widely known that you should chew your food a certain quantity of times. None of us do it. But that's because that way there you can get the most out of your food, because it makes it easier for the rest of your body to do its section. However, there is things like roughage, which help clean you out. And I would think the larger sections of roughage that you digest or that you attempt to digest, the better it is for your body because it helps clean you out. I don't know. Weird. Pregastric. It says here, amylase, an enzyme that breaks down simple carbohydrates, and lingual lipase, a salivary enzyme that starts to break down lipids, begin the process of chemical digestion. Pregastric. Through the process of swallowing, food moves from the mouth to the esophagus. The epiglottis, which is the little guy up here, prevents food from entering the larynx and the trachea. The esophagus serves to transport food to the stomach. The lower esophageal sphincter, located at the bottom of the esophagus, prevents stomach acid from entering the esophagus. So some people that have stomach acid backflow, that's, part of it is that little sphincter isn't doing its job. Some people have chemical or acid influx when they're sleeping and stuff, when they're laying down, and that's because that sphincter, it's a muscle that does this, and that is located down here right above the stomach. Keeps those stomach acids from going back up the tube. Sometimes it fails, And sometimes it fails on purpose. And it fails on purpose because you're expelling all that nastiness that you drank the night before. I've been there a few times, all right? It's called throwing up, right? Stomach. The stomach is physically and chemically digests the food even further, and it stores food and allows for the slow release into the small intestines. Duodenum. Okay, duodenum. Smooth stomach muscles contract to grind and mix ingesta and gastric acid with a pH between 1.5 and 3.5. Woo, that's really acidic. And proteases, enzymes that break down proteins to chemically digest the ingesta. I don't know if we really have to know any of that, but you should know that that is some pretty acidic stuff down in that stomach. Nasty. The pyloric sphincter allows the slow release of chyme, ingesta after gastric digestion, into the duodenum of the small intestine. So there is a sphincter at the top of the stomach and there's a sphincter at the bottom of the stomach. The pyloric sphincter is at the bottom of the stomach, all right? And the lower esophageal sphincter is at the bottom of the esophagus. Simple enough, right? Okay. Holy cow, are we going to get through this tonight, guys? Intestines. Small intestine has 3 sections. Duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Holy cow. Somebody should get fired. Hold on. Let's pull that up so that you guys can see it. All right, so here's the funny thing, is even the sites that talk about the digestive system don't even go into that detail. So why are we going into this kind of detail? Goodness. All right. So it says here the large intestine is much shorter than the small intestine and absorbs water from its contents before they're excreted. So the small intestine, its number one job is that large complex, so it goes from the stomach to the small intestine. And the reason the small intestine is so long is so that your body can take nutrients from the food. That's its primary job, is just to grab nutrients from the ingesta, I guess they call it. The large intestine, its number one job is to extract moisture from whatever that stuff is called at that point, and then extract the rest, okay? The large intestine is much, much shorter than the small intestine. You can see over here in the photo that your small intestine is a long line, and the large intestine, it goes up and around and to the rectum and then to the anus. The liver. The liver is the largest solid organ of the body. It's also the largest gland. It weighs about 3 pounds and in an adult is located below the diaphragm on the right side of the abdomen. So that means the liver is going to be right here, right? And if I remember right, it's kind of like at an angle, so it's kind of like this, right here. That's your liver. It says the liver is made up of 4 lobes: right, left, quadrate, and caudate lobes. Holy cow, hold on. We have to pull that up. What are these lobes? Come on, man. Why are we discussing lobes of the liver? I mean, yeah, none of these are even... This is anatomy of the liver, and they're not even talking about the sections. Why are we going into this detail? Ah, jeez. All right, guys. I don't know if this is on the test, all right? It's probably not, okay? Absolutely ridiculous. So there's the liver. It processes blood once it's received its nutrients from the intestines via the hepatic portal vein. The hepatic artery supplies oxygen-rich blood from the abdominal aorta so that the organ can function. Blood leaves the liver through the hepatic veins. The liver's function units are called lobules. Blood enters the lobules through the branches of the portal vein and hepatic artery. The blood flows through the small channels and the sinusoids. Jesus. Not important. What you should know is this next. It's responsible for the production of bile, the production of certain blood plasma proteins, the production of cholesterol and certain proteins they need to carry fats, storage of excess glucose in the form of glycogen that can be converted back to glucose when needed. So that's your gas tank for the body. Conversion of ammonia that is poisonous to the body to urea. Extremely important. Now urea, we'll get to that in a moment, is essentially pee, all right? So it helps your body convert ammonia, which is it finds in the body, in the blood, into urea, which you're going to pee out later, right? It says here, it's a waste product excreted in urine. Purification of the blood, clearing out the drugs and other toxins. So your liver is the thing that works extra hard when you want to go out drinking for a night. And sometimes your liver can hurt the next morning. True story. Regulation of blood clotting. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Controlling infections by boosting immune factors and removing bacteria. Interesting. The nutrients and drugs that pass through the liver are converted into forms that are appropriate for the body to use. Okay. Pancreas. The pancreas is 6 to 10 inches long in an adult and located at the back of the abdomen behind the stomach. It's long and tapered organ. The wider right side is called the head and the narrower section is called the tail. The head lies near the duodenum, the first section of the small intestine, and its tail ends at the spleen. So here's the spleen. Here's the pancreas, and I guess you can see it right here, how it's a long organ right here on the back side. The body of the pancreas lies between the head and the tail. The pancreas is made up of exocrine and endocrine tissues. The exocrine tissue excretes digestive enzymes from a series of ducts that collectively form the main pancreatic duct that runs the length of the pancreas. The main pancreatic duct connects to the common bile duct near the duodenum, which is the first section of the small intestine. The endocrine tissue secretes hormones such as insulin into the bloodstream. Think that's important? You like sugars? Like sweet foods? Like carbohydrates? It says here, the endocrine tissue secretes hormones such as insulin into the bloodstream. Blood is supplied to the pancreas from the splenic artery, gastroduodenal artery, and superior men's. Who cares? Honestly, geez. Ugh. The gallbladder. The gallbladder is a small sac-like organ located below the liver, right here. You can see the little gallbladder. Together with the liver and bile ducts, it makes the biliary tract. I don't think I've ever heard that term before, biliary tract. The main functions of the gallbladder are to store and concentrate bile. Bile is a fluid containing amphipathic acids called bile salts, which are produced by the liver to aid in absorbing digested lipids. So the bile is concentrated in the gallbladder by removal of the water and is released through the common bile duct into the duodenum. which is that first section of the small intestine, where it encounters chyme from the stomach. Chyme, I guess, is the stuff you eat after it exits the stomach. That's what they call it, chyme. And pancreatic sections, and eventually is mostly reabsorbed through the ileum at the end of the small intestine. Okay, interesting. So if this right here, yep, so right here's the stomach. This guy is laying at an angle. Right here is the duodenum, which is a very important section of the body right here. You just heard me read off a whole bunch of stuff that happens right here in the duodenum. That's where the gallbladder and everything injects its magic dust. The endocrine system. All right, let's pull up the next one, endocrine system. Endocrine is one of the more interesting ones. Boop. There we go. The endocrine system is responsible for secreting hormones and other molecules that help regulate the entire body in both the short and long term. There's a close working relationship between the endocrine and nervous systems. The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland coordinate to serve as the neuroendocrine control center. So the hypothalamus and pituitary gland right here, it's called the neuroendocrine control center. All right. Very important section of the body right there, huh? All right. Hormone secretion is triggered by a variety of signals, including hormonal signs, chemical reactions, and environmental cues. Only cells with particular receptors can benefit from hormonal influence. This is the key in the lock model for hormonal action. Steroid hormones trigger gene activation and protein synthesis in target cells. Protein hormones change the activity of existing enzymes in the target cells. Hormones such as insulin work quickly when the body signals are in urgent need. Slower acting hormones afford longer, gradual, and sometimes permanent changes in the body. I guess those would be like some of your sexual hormones and stuff, because they permanently change your body. Major endocrine glands. Now I think I'm looking here, and I'm looking at this picture, and I think this is going into way too much detail. We're going to go through them real quick. Endocrine glands are intimately involved in a myriad of reactions, functions, and secretions that are crucial to the well-being of the body. The 8 major endocrine glands and their functions include the following. Adrenal cortex. It monitors the blood sugar level and helps in lipid and protein metabolism. Now the adrenal cortex is not up here. Interesting. Adrenal medulla. So again, we'd have to zoom in up here so that you could see this. It controls the cardiac function, raises blood sugar, and controls the size of blood vessels. So when they're talking about controlling the size of blood vessels, there's a myriad of things that contract and expand your blood vessels. One of them is your need to control your blood pressure. That is an involuntary reaction, and it's based on many stimuli. Well, this is the section that controls that. Also, there's things like your reaction to temperature, and let's see, what other ones? I believe also when your body is extremely scared, your blood vessels will contract and it tries to save the core, which is why I believe, if I remember correctly, is why people pass out when they're on those roller coasters and stuff, and you see them up there and all of a sudden they pass out and they're flopping around. It's because their body it's a fight or flight response and is told to constrict those veins. So it is an involuntary contraction. You can't control it. And apparently it's controlled by the adrenal medulla. The thyroid gland helps regulate metabolism and functions in growth and development. We always talk about the thyroid if people are gaining weight or something. The parathyroid regulates calcium levels in the blood. Pancreas islets, raises and lowers blood sugar, active in carbohydrate metabolism. The thymus plays a role in immune responses. The pineal gland has an influence on daily biorhythms and sexual activity. Pituitary gland plays an important role in growth and development. We can see over here in the picture, we've got the adrenal gland, the pancreas, the thyroid, and the parathyroid glands. Pineal gland, pituitary, hypothalamus, the thalamus. Interesting, I didn't know that that's exactly where the thalamus was. Okay, and this one's obviously a female because it's got ovaries, and it's also got testicles. Interesting. Okay. Here's a pretty important one, not that none of these aren't. The renal system. So if you guys hear renal, you should automatically know that this is your kidneys. So anything that goes with renal, your kidneys, clean your blood, pretty important, or else you die. Let's see, open in new page. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. I want a full-size image. Okay, the renal system. The renal system produces and eliminates fluid waste from the body while maintaining the fluid and pH balance needed for the body to function. It consists mainly of the kidneys, ureters, bladder, and urethra. So you can see the ureter, your kidneys way up here. This one here goes into a little bit of extra stuff. It shows the aorta, the same aorta that's up there at the heart. You can see how it goes down near your spine. And you remember we talked about the inferior vena cava. It extracts blood from the lower body. So here you go. The ureter and bladder and urethra, and this is obviously a female. Urethra on a male extends just the same, goes from the bladder down. So there you go. The kidneys themselves are extremely important. And guys, we're almost done. And this means that we're going to be almost done for the day. So the kidneys. The kidneys are bean-shaped organs that are located in the back of the abdominal cavity, just under the diaphragm. Each kidney labeled on the diagram left and right, which you can see here, which they're not labeled left and right because who cares? Each kidney labeled consists of a renal cortex, the outer layer, the renal medulla, which is the inner layer, and the renal pelvis, which consists of waste products from the nephrons and funnels them to the ureter. That's pretty, I don't know. Let's talk about kidneys. Let's see if these guys give a better description. There we go. Now you guys can see what we're talking about. Okay. So the kidneys are bean-shaped organs that are located at the back of the abdominal cavity right under the diaphragm. Each kidney consists of a renal cortex, which you can see right here. It's that thick layer. The renal medulla, which is the inner layer, which you can see right here. It's this area. And the renal pelvis, which collects waste products from the nephrons and funnels them to the ureter. Let's see, renal pelvis. Okay, so that would be this guy right here, which is the main tube that comes up. So that's the tube that the stuff goes out on. All right, we are learning stuff here today, guys. The renal cortex is composed approximately of 1 million nephrons. So the outer layer right here consists of approximately 1 million nephrons, which are tiny individual filters on the kidneys. Each nephron contains a cluster of capillaries called glomerulus. It's not even up here. It's not even up here, guys. It's not even, why? Why is it here and it's not here? Come on. They're surrounded by the cup-shaped Bowman's capsule, which leads to the tubule. And none of that's up here either, of course. The kidneys receive blood from the renal arteries, which branch off from the aorta. So we've seen the aorta in the last one. That's this one right here, this big red one that comes down the middle. So they receive blood from the renal arteries, which branch off from the aorta. In general, the kidneys filter blood, reabsorb needed materials, and secrete and excrete waste and excess water in urine. More specifically, blood flows from the renal arteries into the arterioles into the glomerular, whatever it is, and it's filtered. The glomerular filtrate enters the proximal convoluted tube. Is somebody messing with me here? Come on, guys. Where water, glucose, ions, and other ionic molecules are reabsorbed back into the bloodstream through the renal vein. Guys, ignore all that, right? All you have to know is that there are nephrons in here, and it goes from the nephrons, and it magically comes out here. They filter blood, and they extract needed things, and they preserve the needed things, but the unneeded things they excrete, which go into urine, all right? And they go to the bladder from here, all right? Jeez. These guys, this is absolutely ridiculous that they go in this level of detail. Absolutely ridiculous. This is not going to be on the test. And if it is, after this test, I'm going to absolutely blow up, and you guys are going to see it, all right? Additional substances such as urea and drugs are removed from the blood in the distal convoluted tubule. Also, the pH of the blood can be adjusted in the distal convoluted tubule, which none of that is up here, right? Let's see, is it on this one? Nope, 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 nope. Is it on this one? Nope. Okay. You know, I'm gonna skip by all that. Urine is drained from the kidneys through the ureters to the urinary bladder, where it's stored until expulsion from the body through the urethra. That sounds good to me, guys. Jesus. All right, the male reproductive system. The functions of the male reproductive system, because you guys want to see it. All right, let's see. I don't know if any of them will be good enough detail. Oh. Let's see. That is a horrible, tiny little photo. Let's find something better, guys. Oh, geez. Well, apparently, everybody's shy because nobody wants to have a full-size image. Let's see, this one here, this one here, this one here. There we go. That's better. Okay. The male reproductive system. The functions of the male reproductive system are to produce, maintain, and transfer sperm and semen into the female reproductive tract to produce and secrete male hormones. The external structure includes the penis, the scrotum, and the testes. The penis, which contains the urethra, can fill with blood and become erect, enabling the disposition of semen and sperm into the female reproductive tract during sexual intercourse. The scrotum is a sac of skin and smooth muscle that houses the testes and keeps the testes outside the body while at a cooler, proper temperature for spermatogenesis. I ain't even going to try saying that fast. Spermatogenesis. The testes, or testicles, are the male gonads which produce sperm and testosterone. The internal structure includes the epididymis, vas deferens, ejaculatory tracts, urethra, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and the bulbourethral glands. I'll have to look that one up. And I don't think those glands are on here. Okay. Well, you can see up here the vas deferens. So if you get a vasectomy, that's what they cut. Let's see, we get the pubic bone. You can see the sac that keeps them at a specific temperature. The epididymis, the prostate, which males that have prostate problems, it squeezes down on the urethra and it gives them problems for peeing. And you can see the ejaculatory duct, which is down here, and it utilizes the same urethra. And the seminal vesicles are where stuff is stored when it is getting ready to be used. That's where seminal fluid is stored, not the sperm. Anyway, additionally, the hormones associated with the male reproductive system include follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, which stimulates spermatogenesis, luteinizing hormone, which stimulates testosterone production, and testosterone, which is responsible for the male sex characteristics. FSH and LH are gonadotropins, which stimulate the gonads, male testes, and female ovaries. Wait a minute. It says luteinizing hormone, LH, which stimulates testosterone production and testosterone, which is responsible for male sex characteristics. It says FSH and LH stimulate the gonads. So they stimulate male and female. Interesting. I have 3 kids and I didn't know that. All right. Okay. For a variety of reasons. This is the reproductive system is probably going to be the easiest out of all the systems to sit there and try and explain. That's a good photo right there. Okay, female reproductive system. Guys, this is the last thing I'm going to cover. The functions of the female reproductive system are to produce ova, ovocytes or egg cells, transfer the ova to the fallopian tubes for fertilization, receive the sperm from the male, and provide a protective, nourishing environment for the developing embryo. The external portion of the female reproductive system includes the labia majora, labia minora, Bartholin's glands, and clitoris. The labia majora and labia minora encase and protect the vagina. The Bartholin's glands secrete a lubricating fluid. The clitoris contains erectile tissue and nerve endings for sensual pleasure. It's a myth. The internal portion of the female reproductive system includes the ovaries, fallopian tubes, uterus, and vagina. The ovaries, which are female gonads, produce the ova and secrete estrogen and progesterone. The fallopian tubes carry the mature egg towards the uterus. Fertilization typically occurs in the fallopian tubes. If fertilized, the egg travels to the uterus where it implants in the uterine wall. The uterus protects and nourishes the developing embryo until birth. The vagina is a muscular tube that extends from the cervix of the uterus to the outside of the body. The vagina receives semen and sperm during sexual intercourse and provides a birth canal when needed. So, as it said, the eggs are developed in the ovaries. They travel down the fallopian tubes, where in the fallopian tube is where they're fertilized, and then they come down here into the uterus, and that's where they are implanted. And when they implant, the uterus wall provides blood and nourishment to that cell as it develops. All right. So, holy cow. Holy cow. Guys. So that was just covering these. All right. So that was already probably too long. All right, guys. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over the flashcards, and I'm going to see what percentage of this? I remember. I don't know. I have no idea. We're going to find out together. So, join me tomorrow night. I'm going to do hopefully not so long of a session, and we're going to cover some more of this material. In this video description, I will leave videos to each and every one of these systems. So all this stuff that I said over the last 2 hours, you can get in a nice, brief format. Maybe even better than what I said. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me on this stream. This is just the beginning of my study guide. This is me and my studies, and you guys are just along for the ride. All right? So if you have any other questions or whatnot, I will answer them. Just go ahead and leave me your questions down below, and I will see if I can get to them. All right? Guys, you have been awesome. You've been extremely quiet. That allowed me to study. So except for the fact that this is on camera, this really is kind of me studying. That's how I study, man. So it's me on my own. So let's see. Muhammad Patel says, how do you manage everything? I don't. I don't. Not at all. Let's see. As a BMET, will we ever test liver? I haven't. No. However, knowing what the liver does and knowing your cholesterol level is affected by your liver, they can actually detect if they're between like your white blood cell count and your cholesterol level. They can kind of figure out what's going on with your internal organs. So if your cholesterol level is off the charts, they can kind of figure out that your liver has got something going on. All right. So it's interesting when you start talking about doing blood tests that they can use just knowledge of the anatomy to figure out what's going on in your blood. So when you do a full blood workup, maybe I'll pull a full blood workup and I'll show you guys what's in it. And there's a variety of things that they can figure out from a blood workup, which is crazy. So no, you don't test the liver. However, knowing the liver is pretty important. Knowing how the kidneys work, that's important. That's going to be important. Knowing how the blood works, that's going to be important. How the heart works, very important. How the gastrointestinal system works, that's important, because obviously a lot of problems that you and I have are going to be gastrointestinal, right? It's not very likely that you or I have, nervous problems. Usually we're going to have gastrointestinal problems. It's like your number one concern. Nervous systems, you can get nerve damage and stuff very easily. And understanding nerve monitors and stuff, I guess just understanding the brain and how the nerves function, it's not really necessary to know extreme details. Guys, we're going to figure this out. So tomorrow, I'm going to go through the flashcards. Expect my session tomorrow to last about 1 hour. Let's say 1 hour. God, does it ever just last that long? And we're going to see. And if I see something on these flashcards that I really don't understand, or I think that we didn't cover in that material that I just completely read out to you guys, we're going to look it up. And we're going to see. Maybe it's complete garbage. What are the odds of that, right? So anyway, if I just went completely over your head on things, don't worry. Watch the videos that I'm going to post down below. Probably tomorrow morning I'll post those. And then tomorrow evening, come back here. We'll go through the flashcards, see if there's any holes in our study pattern, and maybe we'll make adjustments and look that material up right here. Okay? All right, guys. Thanks all for watching, and I hope to see you